Welcome to Financial Accent. So today we'll be taking a look at two terms that you can incorporate into your financial vocabulary, namely to account for something, meaning to explain the reason for something, and a tight labor market. So a tight labor market is characterized by an economy that is almost close to maximum capacity of employment, and therefore hiring people or recruitment becomes cumbersome or difficult. As a result, excess demand makes wages rise, and this leads to inflation. So, today we'll also be taking a look at verbs and nouns that we can paraphrase. So, let's study together. So, today we'll be studying inflation, the definition thereof, and examples of the term inflation in today's news. So first of all, we talk about inflation. It refers to the rate at which prices for goods and services keep on increasing. So in America, the Federal Reserve or the central bank establishes the federal funds rate. What is the federal funds rate? It is the interest rate determined by the FOMC, which stands for Federal Open Market Committee, where member banks or commercial banks, they borrow and lend their excess reserves to each other overnight. So simply put, federal funds rate is nothing more than an interest rate set by the Fed. Now let's look at some examples of inflation. Over the past 4 decades, the large and steady decline in US interest rate stands out like a sore thumb. So we see that many decades ago, the 10-year Treasury note interest rate sat at more than 15%, but now it has declined in value, to almost zero, to less than 1%. The same thing has happened with the federal funds rate. It is almost zero now. So we see that the interest rate has declined steadily over time, over 4 decades. And so we naturally ask ourselves the question, what accounts for the drop in interest rates? To account for something means to explain. So what is the cause? What accounts for the drop in value of the interest rates? Or what is the cause of the drop in interest rates? So one cause for the drop in interest rate is due to inflation expectations. So inflation expectations accounts for the drop in interest rates. For example, when bond investors predict or foresee high inflation, the bond investors, they have an expectation or they demand a higher interest rate. When this anticipated inflation declines, when this predicted inflation goes down, then the interest rate also goes down. So here is another vocabulary term, a tight labor market. So when we characterize a labor market to be tight, what we mean is that an economy is close to maximum employment. Lots of people have jobs, and the number of jobs to be filled are getting smaller. And recruitment becomes cumbersome or more difficult. As a consequence, excess demand makes people's wages increase. So the Federal Reserve attempts to set interest rates at an optimum level that will foster or that will promote full employment and stable prices of goods and services. Dual mandate. What is the dual mandate? It refers to the two goals of price stability and maximum sustainable employment. In other words, the dual mandate is characterized by two goals of making the price of goods and services stable, increasing steadily, and maintaining maximum employment. So we know that the interest rate setting body of the U.S. Federal Reserve is called the FOMC, or in other words, the Federal Open Market Committee. The Fed was concerned about too low an unemployment rate because the tight labor market implies higher future inflation. What does this mean? It means that the Fed was, if the unemployment is too low, then the labor market is tight. A tight labor market leads to higher inflation. Why? Because there are less chances of people getting recruited in a tight labor market, and therefore we have more competition in the marketplace, the labor market, and therefore wages increase. And this leads to future inflation. Remember, maximum employment means further recruitment is cumbersome, and excess demand of jobs, it triggers increases in wages.